In this stock pot, this is my new stock pot by the way, I've got apple juice. That may not look like apple juice, but that is freshly pressed apple juice straight from the orchard. I went and joined in a community apple pressing event today and came home with a large amount of apple juice. Some of it I've frozen, some of it we'll drink fresh, and some of it I want to make into cider. Quick interlude from Future Shrimp. This is the point we're working back to in this video, where I've got my apple juice fermenting into cider here. That's as far as we're going to go in part one, because the fermentation process takes about a month, or maybe longer. But it's long enough that I need to put this video out in 2 parts, especially if you want to go and do some things with apples which are in season right now. A little bit of disambiguation for anybody who's confused by the term cider. I'm English, I'm using the English definition of the word cider, which is fermented apple juice. Cider always means fermented apple juice here in England. In other parts of the world I do understand that cider is sometimes the word for just cloudy, pressed apple juice that hasn't been fermented. But here, cider always means fermented apple juice. Sometimes other fruits as well. Although if you make cider with pears, it's called perry. Anyway, so yeah, hopefully if that had any potential for confusion, that's now sorted out for you. On with the video. The normal procedure for making cider from fresh pressed apples would be to shock it with sulfites, to put some sodium metabisulfite in there, Campden tablets I think that's called, kill off the naturally occurring bacteria and wild yeasts that are in there, and then add some cultivated yeast to ferment it under controlled conditions. Can't do that because Jenny is deathly allergic to sulfites, so I'm going to pasteurize this apple juice, and then when it's completely cooled down I'll add the yeast and we'll make it from pasteurized juice. It won't be quite the same as making cider from, fresh cold apple juice, because pasteurizing it will alter the flavour profile a bit, but it'll still be quite nice, I think. So I've actually just topped that up and we've still got a bit of apple juice left in there. I've frozen 6 litres of apple juice. We've got a 3 litre jug in the fridge, and this thing is 11 litres I think, but we're not quite full, so it's probably about 10 litres of apple juice in here. I need to raise the temperature to between 72 and 75 degrees Celsius and hold it there for 15 to 20 minutes to pasteurise this. Got the temperature probe, and I've just noticed this little vent hole here is just the right size for that to go in. So I can monitor the temperature there while I do something else. We're up to about 50 at the moment. So yeah, we can just watch this now creeping up to 62 now. In case you're wondering what else was bubbling away here, it's a mix for shepherd's pie. This juice, by the way, this is the last little bit of it here, which I'll have to strain because there are actually chunks of apple in it. So this was pressed from a variety of different apples, including, but not limited to, Bramley, I think Ashmead's Kernel. There were some Cox type apples in there as well. So it's a variety of different dessert and cooking apples. And this is the completely raw, unpasteurised version of it here that I'm just about to taste a little bit. And you can see it's brown. And the reason it's brown is the same reason that apples go brown when you cut them. A reaction with the air. If you get commercial juice, I think they add citric acid to the apples to prevent that from happening. But none of that here. This is just literally apples ground up, pressed. So that is just pure natural apple juice. I'm going to taste it and tell you what I think. It's syrupy. It's been a tremendously warm, sunny year this summer, and so the apples have produced an enormous amount of sugar, and you can taste it. It's very syrupy, but it's also quite nicely acidic. That'll be the cooking apples. Really nice and sharp. Over here we're now up to 73.5, nearly 74 I think. Yep. So not far to go now before we are actually at the point where I turn the heat off. Right, we've just hit 75, so down here I'll turn that off and we'll start the timer. And I've just got to watch for the next 20 minutes that doesn't drop below 72. Right, time's up, and we didn't go below 74 actually, so that's good. Now what I'm going to do now is just put a little piece of tape over that hole, and then I'm going to put the whole pan, without taking the lid off, somewhere cool to cool down to room temperature. And then we can add yeast and get it in some fermentation vessels. So yeah, out here on the floor in the utility room, this is an unheated room, this will be nice and cool. Hopefully that will cool down fairly quickly. It's the following day, and this is now cooled down to room temperature. And I've got some yeast. So this is a white wine yeast, but it'll do for cider. There's enough here for 23 litres, which is twice as much as this. So actually what I probably will do, I'll probably put more than half this packet in there, but I might save a little bit and see what happens if we make bread with white wine yeast. The yeasts are different, but not that different. So I sealed this up with masking tape. Obviously that's not a hermetic seal, but it's good enough to keep most of the dirt and bugs and stuff out of here. So while this is cooling down, that's minimised the introduction of any wild organisms. So we are to sprinkle this on the surface of the juice and then wait 15 minutes and then stir it in. Okay, that's about half of it. And yeah, I'll save the other half for maybe trying to start a bread dough. We'll see what that's like, just for fun. So 15 minutes. I'm sure it doesn't need to be precise, but I might as well time it because I've got something else to do. I've got a refractometer. I picked this up in a charity shop quite a while ago and put it away in a cupboard and completely forgot about it. This is a device for measuring the sugar content of fruit juice. It's got a little thing there. You put a dab of the liquid on there, close that up, and it produces a film in between. And because sugar in solution in water increases the refractive index of the liquid, you can look through the end here, and there's a little gauge, and depending on how it refracts the light, it tells you the sugar concentration. There are instructions. I'm going to see if I can get you a view through this refractometer. It ought to be possible. I'm just going to test it now. Oh, there we go. So that's what it looks like when you look through this refractometer. So if I can, I'll try and get you a view of what we've got on there. First though, we need to calibrate it. It comes with a little plastic pipette and a tiny screwdriver, because underneath this cap here is a little screw. So what we need to do is put some water on there first. I've got samples here of juice and water, distilled water, that I've left out and allowed to come to the same temperature. So first off, I need to put some water on there. Put a few drops of water on there, like that. Close up the lid and then press it, and it has to cover the whole of this slide. And then I look through here and make sure that the calibration, the white line, is on 0. So I'll see if I can show you that. There it is. It's already actually perfectly calibrated. So there we go, the white line is on 0. So that's good. So we'll give that a wipe off because we don't want to dilute the juice. Probably should use a separate pipette, but I'll shake that one out, it'll be fine. And same deal here, so put a little drop of the apple juice on there. This is a sample of juice that I haven't boiled, so it's possibly slightly lower in sugar than the other one because it's not been reduced, but I didn't really reduce it much. Okay, and I'm seeing about 11.5 bricks. There we go, 11.5, I think, bricks. I don't know how strong that is. I'm going to go and look that up now and see what that is in meaningful terms. But yeah, that's between 11 and 12 on that scale. Well, anyway, so we saw that. I'm just going to take a still photo of that as well so that I can refer back to it. Oops, there it is. That's what I'm seeing through here. Anyway, I'm going to go and figure out what that means in terms of the concentration of sugar in here, and then I'll let you know. Meanwhile, I'm not going to waste that little bit of juice. It does taste ever so sweet and sugary. I don't know how much reality there is to that. Okay, well, assuming this thing's correct, actually 11.5 bricks is not very strong. I mean, this is actually this is for winemaking as well as other things. So this is for measuring bricks in grape juice, and grape juice can be very sweet, very sugary. But yeah, so 11.5 bricks is not especially sugary. So maybe the sweetness in this stuff is coming from aromatic other flavours, and perhaps the syrupy texture is something else again in the juice, maybe pectins and things like that. So I could end up with pectin haze. Don't care for cider though, actually don't mind if it's cloudy. Anyway, but 11.5 bricks I think should ferment out to about 7% alcohol. Okay, time's up on that yeast, so I'm going to give that a stir in now using a sterilised spoon. I'm going to simplify. I'm not going to go into massive detail about the sterilisation techniques I'm using for all the equipment, because it's one of those things that just attracts the pedants. If you're going to make homemade wine or cider or beer, do go off and have a look at how you're supposed to do sterilisation and find what you think is plausible and realistic. I can't use sulfites for any of the sterilisation because of Jenny's allergy, so I have to find other ways. So what I'm doing is not always very standard. I'm going to leave that now. Just put this pan in a bigger bowl, in a washing up bowl of warm water, just to warm that up a little bit, give the yeast a chance to get going. Okay, so the apple juice with yeast has now been warmed up to 21 degrees, and that's as far as I'm going to take it. That's Celsius, by the way. Now I did think about siphoning this into the demijohns, but I think it'll just be easier to do it with the jug and a funnel. So I have sterilised my demijohns. And yeah, as I say, I'm sorry if my reluctance to discuss sterilisation methods is annoying to you, but it's not that I don't want to hear from people who have opinions on it. It's just often the opinions that people have are very strongly held and very angrily argued. And that would be fine if people were telling me some objective truth, but there's a diversity of different ways to do the same job here. And everybody thinks they're right, including me. And so, whichever way you do your sterilisation of your vessels, you're going to find somebody angrily telling you did it wrong. And I've got no time for that, I'm afraid. So, if you have a strongly held view on how the equipment for fermentation should be sterilised, do feel free to share it in the comments, and just assume I did it the way you think is right. Now we need to leave some headspace because this might foam up a little bit. So I'm going to stop there for the moment. I think this will fill 3 vessels, but we'll see. So I'm going to stop about there, bring in the next. And putting it in here like this is aerating it a little bit, but actually at this stage in the fermentation process, that's probably desirable. You do need a little bit of oxygen to get the yeast started. Once it gets going, it will get into anaerobic fermentation, and that's when it starts to make alcohol. But during this initial growth phase, it'll probably need a little bit of oxygen just to get it boosted. Okay, I'm going to stop about there. So I decided actually same thing's going to happen here. I've got some apple juice I was keeping in the fridge. It's too sweet for us to drink as apple juice. So I'm going to heat that up to 72, hold it there for 20 minutes, let it cool overnight, and then in the morning I'll use that to top up the 3rd demijohn. There is, however, one more thing I want to try while we've got all this apple juice around. This is the last bit of fresh apple juice we've got. I did also yesterday dehydrate some apple rings. So I cut some apples into slices and they're now dehydrated into delicious apple rings. This was a pink fleshed apple, so they've come out looking kind of quite rosy coloured. Anyway, what I want to do is find out what happens if you rehydrate these in apple juice. So we've driven off water to dehydrate them, and if I put apple juice back on them, in theory I'm doubling up the appliness. That is my theory. I suppose we'll see what happens in practice. So I'm going to put those like that, lid on, and in the fridge overnight. So this bread we're going to make with the wine yeast that was left over from the cider. I've got a mixture of 3 different flours. I've got mixed grain bread flour that's malted barley and stuff in it. Wessex cobber, similar idea but different blend of grains in there. 200 grams each of those, and 100 grams of strong white bread flour. Pinch of salt, little splash of oil. So there's 500 grams of flour in there, and normally I would put 300 grams of water in here. But I had an idea. Rather than just using the cider yeast, I've got this bit of apple juice left over. So I'm actually going to use this apple juice for the liquid part of the bread. This is the last of the fresh apple juice, just taken out and warmed up to sort of blood heat. But because that's got a higher specific gravity than water, I'm going to add a little bit more than 300 grams. And there's the yeast that I've bloomed with a little bit of sugar. So that's 74 grams. And I'm going to make this up to about 325 with the apple juice. That's my liquid component. And all I'm going to do is just make sure that those ingredients are thoroughly mixed. I'm not going to do any kneading. I'm just going to make sure there's no dry flour at the bottom of this mix. That's it. I've incorporated all the dry flour. What I'll probably do is allow that to develop, knead it with the dough hooks on the mixer, and then probably put it in the fridge overnight. So what about this dehydrated apple rehydrated in apple juice? Well, I'll take a piece from the bottom there actually, because some of the top parts weren't completely immersed. Okay, it has rehydrated, and in the same way that dried apple normally does, it's a bit floppy now. And that is approximately twice as appley as a piece of apple would be. Let's try a bigger piece. A great big piece. Yeah, that tastes more appley than apples. There's a stronger apple flavour than you typically get in a slice of apple. I'll just turn them over so that the other ones can get a soak as well. I'll put that back in the fridge for another 12 hours, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with it. So this is a bread dough. It's actually the next day, so this proved overnight. It started to rise. I gave it a quick knead, put it back in the bowl, put it in the fridge overnight. So it's had quite a long, slow ferment. I took it out this morning. It doubled in size, so now I've knocked it back, and I'm going to prepare it ready for baking now. So I've just given it another little knead. It shouldn't need very much more kneading really. The gluten is well developed. I'm going to make a hen and chickens loaf. So about 1/3 of this is just going to be a nice big ball. That's going to go in the middle of my tray. And the remainder I'm going to cut into how many pieces? Half, yeah. So it's going to end up being 8 little pieces. So just to recap, this is bread that has been leavened with wine yeast and has also got apple juice as most of the liquid content. I've made apple juice bread before, and it's surprising how little difference it makes to put something other than water as the liquid component of your bread. It's really weird. I've done it with yogurt, I've done it with apple juice, and actually it comes out surprisingly normal considering it's a different liquid that's being used for the moisture of the bread. So to form these into balls, bread rolls, we just make a cage with one hand and roll it around like that on the flat of the other palm in a circular motion, and you end up with a bread roll. I'm arranging those like that. I've left a little bit of space in between them because they will expand when they prove, and this should result in a big central loaf with little bread rolls around it, hen and chickens. I'm not a massive fan of cling film in general, but for a loaf like this it really does need to be covered while it's proving. So I've got a piece of cling film which I've just oiled here, and that's just going to go over the top of the bread, leaving a bit of slack for expansion. This is now going to go in a warm place, which in my case is the airing cupboard. That's the cupboard where the hot water cylinder lives, until that's doubled in size and they've all joined back together. Here's the 3 demijohns. This one's the one I topped up. You can see there's quite a lot of activity going on here. There's quite a foamy top now. The yeast is busy. The airlocks are bubbling away. We'll have a close look at that in just a moment. This is the warmest room in the house when the heating isn't on, because the hot water tank lives in a cupboard in this room. So this is a good place for these to be fermenting. So I don't know how long that's going to take. Probably several weeks at least, but we've just got to leave that to ferment now. Okay, there's my loaf after about an hour's proving. It's looking all right. And now, bearing in mind, this has got quite a lot of sugar in it because it's got apple juice in place of the water. And what I'm doing here is just brushing the surface with plain water, which will dissolve out some of those sugars and hopefully leave them on the top here, so we get a nice caramelized brown crust. I can tell this has risen really well. It's a really, really soft rise here, so I'm being ever so gentle not to knock down the aeration. The total proving time for this loaf has been nearly 24 hours. Now that's not a very long time. You know, some people make bread and they prove it for days, but this should have a nice flavour because of that 24-hour fermentation. Just got to now wait for the oven to come up to temperature, and then that goes in. So these apple pieces have now been soaking for a good while, and I have a plan for how we're going to use these. And I'm going to cut these up. These are tiny cubes, like that, tiny dice. Nice neat little dice like that. That's going to go into a pan. I'm going to add this juice, what's left of this apple juice that hasn't soaked in, and I'm going to reduce that down until that's a syrup with the little apple pieces in it. So reducing it further will further concentrate the apple flavour. I'm planning to serve this with some pork chops, so hopefully this will be like apple sauce but 3 times as appley. It's not going to have the smooth texture of applesauce, although I suppose I could blend it, but I think I'm going to leave it as little cubes like this. I'm just going to heat this and reduce it until that liquid is a syrup. This is, I think, similar in concept to the thing that you sometimes see on chefy TV programs where they say this is, you know, they're going to have compressed cucumber or something. But although I think they use vacuum chambers and things for that rather than what I'm doing here, which was just a regular dehydrator and then apple juice and then reducing it in a pan. Anyway, that's nearly at the boil now. And all this steam coming off, that's what I want. So I want just the water vapour to leave. Right, if I can just show you what's going on here now. We have got almost no remaining juice. There is still some if I squeeze the apple pieces. So I'm just going to keep going for a tiny bit longer. The other thing that's similar to this is apple butter. So apple butter, as I understand it, is apple sauce that's just basically stewed down until it reduces down to a very thick paste. So that's a similar idea, but obviously the preparation path here has been quite different because these apples were dehydrated and we're condensing extra juice into them. I think that's where I'm going to stop. So that's actually quite a lot of apple condensed down into this tiny amount of confection here. Can't wait to taste it. At the moment it's too hot, so I will wait. Alright, well there's my hen and chicken's loaf. It's really browned ever so quickly because, and I'm sure that is the apple juice. This only took 22 minutes to bake to this colour. I've probed it and it is cooked in the middle. And there was, when I took it out of the oven, a fruity, appley aroma. So maybe that will have survived in the loaf. It's been my experience that when you put things into bread, bread is typically a very effective attenuator of flavour when you add things into it. So I'm not confident this is going to taste of apple, but we'll see, won't we? Okay, I've got high hopes for this. I tasted a little bit of this apple, what do you want to call this? Condensed apple compote, and it's really, really intensely apple. So, baked sweet potato. I'll just open those up. Slip a little bit of butter in there. Pan fried pork steak. With a little quenelle of condensed apple compote. Just some simple steamed carrots. And sweet corn with cream cheese and tarragon. Obviously, this video segment's all about the apple that's going on here. Okay, so this is this condensed apple compote with the pork. Actually, it goes really well with the salty roasted meat. It's quite sour. It's very appley. What do you think, Jenny?
Mmm. Yeah, that's nice actually.
Well, I'm going to have a piece of bread off of here. Very happy with the texture of that bread. A little bit of butter. It's definitely got a sweet, fruity note to it. I would never have guessed that's apple if I didn't know. But the wine yeast has done a magnificent job of leavening that loaf. And again, I can't really tell the difference from the yeast. Maybe if I'd let it ferment for a lot longer, we would have tasted some difference. Quite happy with that bread. So I had a little bit of this apple stuff left, this compressed apple sauce, whatever you want to call it. And I think, obviously, I have to try it with some yogurt. So I've got some 5% Fire yogurt here, and the apple stuff. I'll try it kind of incompletely mixed first. Needless to say, that is good. Now I'll try mixing it in. Also good. Not quite as good. I think I prefer it a bit unmixed. Apple's not a very common flavour for yoghurt. I don't really know why, because it is good. A very slight change of configuration. The froth in the top of these demijohns has got a little bit lively and made its way all the way up to the bung there. And I had a tray under it anyway, but I think I've, just as a belt and braces, I've put these inside a plastic box. If the foam does make its way through the airlock, it should just dribble down the sides anyway. I don't think it'll blow these caps off. And I suspect in a day or two this foam will collapse and break down anyway. So yeah, these are really fermenting quite vigorously now. About every 5 seconds in this one. I think it's about 7 seconds in this one and 5 in that one. So yeah, all doing more or less what it should. So yeah, following morning, that froth has now actually collapsed back down. It never did actually make it out of the bungs, so false alarm, but it was worth being prepared. So here we are at the end of part 1. All 3 vessels are now vigorously fermenting, and that's really all we can do for now. This might take several weeks before it's completed, so in part 2 we'll be bottling it, giving it a little taste, and maybe doing something with this yeast sediment here. Maybe we'll make a cider version of Marmite. Cidermite. So anyway, I hope that's been interesting so far. Stick around for part 2. That'll be coming in a month or so. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.